뉴스를 보면서 외형적으로 대통령이 바뀌고 이런 거 미국에서 그런 것만 보고 있는데 지금 말씀 들으니까 트럼프 대통령이 들어오기 전부터 그런 두려움이 이용되고 그런 조짐이 있었다는 것, 그걸 새롭게 알게 되었습니다. 근데 지금 파머와께서 새로운 개정판을 쓰시면서 긴 서문에 여러 가지 내용을 담으셨거든요. 근데 거기에 보면, 어떤 정치적 견해나 입장이 맞지 않는 그런 친구들, 그런 가족들, 저희들도 많이 경험하고 있는데, 그런 사람들과 이렇게 대면할 때 여러 가지 감정적 갈등에 빠지고 관계가 단절되기도 합니다. 그럴 때 사회가 굉장히 긴장이 심화되거든요. 우리가 늘 경험하는 건데 미국에서도 그럴 테고요. 이런 상황에서 우리가 어떻게 지혜를 찾을 수 있을지 말씀 부탁드립니다.
Well, again, this is something that we're dealing with great difficulty and pain here in the United States. So again, we're sharing experiences and possibilities because I think we're both in a very similar situation. I think the first thing to recognize is that it's a classic strategy of authoritarianism, of totalitarianism, of fascism, to make people so suspicious of one another that you're not even sure who you can talk to in your own family. You're not sure who you can talk to among your friends. You're not sure who you can talk to among your colleagues. If you're teachers, you may have concerns about who you can talk with among your students. And so it goes. Because again, at the heart of any authoritarian strategy, political strategy, is breaking up the social relationships that weave a community that can amplify our voices and help us call our political system back to health, back to democracy. So I think it's critical for people to understand that this isn't happening by accident. This is happening by design. And for some people, at least, when they understand that it's happening by design, there's something in the human spirit that says, I'm not going to fall for this. I'm not going to take the bait. I'm going to talk, because talking openly, as we're doing here right now, is one of the most important things we can do to preserve our democratic system, to not be afraid of openly sharing our convictions, our hearts, the best thoughts of our minds in a public way. And I think every public person in this society, including some of our elected officials, is on high alert today about how they may become the targets of unconstitutional governmental action, depending on what they say. And I am among those who says, I'm still not going to be quiet. I'm still not going to shut up, because I'm a citizen of this democracy, and I have and will always have a right to speak. Now, among our intimate relationships, among family and friends, I think one of the most important things we can do is to try to ease our way into political conversations by not making them political at first. One of the most successful approaches that people in this country have taken to those conversations, and I take them in my own work, is to begin with personal storytelling. Tell the story of how you came to believe what you believe in today. And if you listen openly, it's often quite fascinating to realize that despite your political differences, you share personal experiences at a very deep level, because ultimately there is more that we share than that in which we differ. And the stories of our lives bring those things out. We could go on at great length about particular questions that can be raised and ways of listening with care without judgment, just listening, and eventually getting to the point of talking about why it is that you hold different political views based on your different and your shared life experiences. Because one thing we know about human beings is that two people can have very similar life experiences, but interpret them in quite different ways. But somehow what we're doing when we start with the stories of our lives is to create a container that at least gives us a chance to sustain a relationship long enough to get into more complicated and more contested, conflicted topics like political opinions. But if we start out with political opinions and viewpoints, the odds are that we're not going to get very far with those with whom we differ. I wrote a piece this last week that appears on my Substack page. I don't know if Substack is known in Korea, this platform for expression that many people in this country are now using. But I have a Substack page called Living the Questions with Parker J. Palmer. And this last week, I wrote about taking our close relationships a step farther than what I just said. And that, in my mind, has to do with what I call bearing witness. Bearing witness. Witnessing to what we believe to be true in a straightforward, non-judgmental way that simply says, this is what I believe and this is why I believe it. I believe in love, truth, and justice, and here's why. I can make that statement without insulting anybody. And if it challenges people close to me, if it challenges members of my family, if it challenges friends and colleagues, then let's talk about it. I've said nothing that would insult them. I've said nothing that would alienate them, but I have made it clear that I have some core beliefs that relate to politics that are very close to the heart of who I am, very close to the core of my identity and integrity. And if I can't express those in the face of people with whom I want to have a relationship, then what kind of relationship is it? How can you have an authentic relationship with another person if you cannot be yourself in that relationship? I'm not saying I have an answer to that question, but I'm saying it's an important question. I try to make it clear to everybody in my life, I hope we can sustain our relationship. I hope we can continue to be trusting family members or trustworthy friends. But if we can't express who we really are, me to you, you to me, then what kind of relationship do we have? So I think that's probably the extent of what I can say right now. There's a range of possibilities about how to hold these difficult relationships. And we have to be discerning about what to do in any given situation. I heard today from a woman who had a very sad story to tell. She had two sons. One of them committed suicide not long ago. I don't know why. She's desperate to stay in relationship to her other son, despite the fact that they differ radically in their political views. And of course, I would not ask her to do anything other than try to stay in that relationship in any way possible, because they need each other. So there's always discerning to be done about priorities. But there's a wide range of relationships in which I believe the political crisis in my country is so severe right now. We are so close to the tipping point into some sort of authoritarianism that I put priority on bearing witness about my democratic convictions with a small d, my convictions about democracy in a wide range of relationships with exceptions like the one I just noted.
예, 굉장히 섬세한 그런 마음이 필요하다는 생각이 듭니다. 자기의 개인적인 이야기를 먼저 나누는 것, 그리고 또 민주주의의 증인이 되는 그런 마음을 갖는 거에 굉장히 소중한 지혜로 다가옵니다.